It's you, you bastard! Recalling those unbearable days in prison, Speedo Sound Sonic's handsome face twisted, his teeth grinding together. Ever since Sexy Prisoner had mistaken him for a woman and backed off, life in the cell had been nothing short of heaven. He could cultivate alone in the dark prison space, perfect for his sneaky, crawling ninja style, and he rarely had to work, because Sexy Prisoner thought it unmanly to make a frail girl do chores in front of so many grown men. Sonic thought this easy life would last until he could map out the routines of the guards and Sexy Prisoner and make his escape. He never expected a single remark from some nobody to turn his heaven into hell. Even now, the words echoed in his soul. Boss, you said he only has one of the three pieces, so he's judged to be a girl, but I don't think that's right. Even if he lost two of the three pieces, he still keeps 1/3. According to your theory, boss, the more a piece of jade looks like glass, the more valuable it is. If it really were glass, it would have no value. But think about it, boss. This guy kept one of the three pieces, which means he isn't glass but a piece of jade infinitely close to glass. How could you call him glass? That value is off the charts, okay? In other words, Sexy Prisoner had concluded that after Sonic lost his two magic pills, he was essentially a woman. But his underling argued that Sonic still had his gun intact, making him the perfect femboy, an existence infinitely close to a girl but not a girl. Sonic didn't know what Sexy Prisoner was thinking at the time, only that his eyes had grown bright as stars. From that day on, Sonic's bliss ended. Sexy Prisoner began visiting daily, for kissing, hugging, lifting, and every time the massive man's thick masculinity pressed against him, Sonic's face contorted with pain. When the man's erect chest hairs scraped his face, it stung in more ways than one. It felt like 1,000 holes were being torn into his soul. Because the injury to his lower body hadn't healed, Sonic would clench his crotch at any sudden movement, and locked in a cell, he couldn't run. So this proud, conceited dark ninja was handled roughly by the muscular man every single day. To be fair, Sexy Prisoner hadn't done anything unforgivable, but the constant kissing, hugging, and lifting were enough to crush Sonic's defenses. Until today. It looked like Sexy Prisoner had gone out on some hero business, so Sonic seized the chance. He forced himself to run, even risking his healing wound to unleash top speed. After so many days of rest, the injury had almost mended, and the flames of revenge burned fiercely in his chest. Kill, kill. The humiliation you put me through, I Speedo Sound Sonic, will never forget it. People on the street only felt a gust of wind. None had time to see what dashed past them. After easily vaulting a warning iron fence, Sonic entered Z-City Ghost Town. Even after becoming an S-Class hero and earning a big salary, Saitama still lived in the ghost town, partly out of habit, partly because not paying utility bills was convenient. Relying on memory, Sonic stopped in front of a somewhat dilapidated building. He could feel it. Inside, there was the aura of that damn bald head. Sonic changed into his nearly all-black form-fitting ninja suit, tied a purple scarf around his neck, and let his messy black hair fly. He grinned and produced a dozen small black spheres from behind his back, explosives he'd prepared at his secret base before coming. Since he wanted revenge, he'd start by destroying the man's home. Sonic's grin widened as he flicked his hand. The little black spheres traced precise arcs through the air and, under his exquisite ninja control, surrounded Saitama's house in an instant. Boom, boom, boom. Deafening explosions rocked the ghost town. A small mushroom cloud rose, thick black smoke curling into the sky. Sonic had already retreated 100 meters away. His right hand hovered near his sword hilt as he watched the smoke and flames with a triumphant look. Come on, Saitama, let's see what you can do. In the next instant, a violent gust of wind burst from the center of the smoke, dispersing smoke and flames as if they'd never been. Hey, what's going on? Did a gas leak explode? Saitama called, rubbing his nose and looking around in mild annoyance. When he saw his newly bought TV and the manga signed by its author reduced to ashes, Saitama's expression darkened. His gaze flicked upward and met Speedo Sound Sonic's, perched 100 meters away. He sniffed, caught the faint smell of gunpowder, and his face went cold. It was you, you bastard! No. Saitama had never been this angry. Ever since he'd become the strongest and lost all his hair, he'd known frustration. losing at rock, paper, scissors to bang, getting schooled by King at video games, but it was always just annoyance at being bested. This, though, seeing his long-serving TV ruined, the signed manga volumes he'd waited half a day to get trampled, the expensive air conditioner smashed, the burst pipes and shredded wiring, something inside him snapped. For a moment, he even imagined a halo rising from the ruined appliances, drifting up to heaven. Sonic! Why did you blow up someone else's house for no reason? Do you think this is funny? The bald Demon King's voice was low and dangerous. He rarely got Sonic's name right, and veins stood out on his smooth scalp as a wave of pure killing intent rolled off him. Sonic had wanted to rile him up, and he'd succeeded. A cruel smile spread across the ninja's face, eyes bright with the thrill of revenge. That's it. Hate me, then enjoy my revenge. He opened his mouth to taunt when his gaze met Saitama's. Everything went wrong in an instant. It was like stepping into an ice cellar. The world flushed scarlet, and the man's anger was a living, violent thing that made Sonic's nerves scream. I'll die! I'll die! I'll die! I'll die! The trained ninja's mind narrowed to one blunt warning: death. With a sharp, almost animal cry, Sonic drew his long sword and slashed his own thigh. Blood spurted. The pain snapped him back into control. This can't be real. How can that bald guy be this strong? Without hesitation, he fished a handful of black shuriken from somewhere on his back and tossed them with precise force. The metal traced different trajectories through the air, aiming for the back of Saitama's head, his neck, his heart. Every lethal point Sonic could reach. Then, instead of pressing the attack, he turned and ran, a blur of motion. My body's not healed yet. We'll fight another day. Don't think I'm scared of you. He forced himself to believe it. That surge of killing intent had terrified him. Every instinct screamed that attacking would mean certain death. So he blamed cowardice on his wounds, convinced he'd be able to beat Saitama once he recovered. A crisp clatter came from behind him. Sonic turned and saw the shuriken, all of them, knocked aside in a single motion. Saitama wasn't playing ninja games anymore. He raised a hand and swatted the projectiles away. In the blink of an eye, he closed the distance. Sonic, whose pride was his speed, felt his heart drop. Damn it, my speed! Knowing he couldn't outrun him, Sonic drew his long sword and lunged, blade flashing in the light. A rush of wind brushed Saitama's neck. Calm as ever, Saitama tilted his head and opened his mouth, clamping his teeth down on the blade. Crack! It wasn't his teeth that broke. Sonic's finely forged sword shattered into shards. As metal rained, a cold dread crawled up Sonic's spine. Is this guy even human? Before he could think, a huge hand seized his collar and a voice, low and terrible, hissed in his ear. Got you. Pay me for all this damage, you bastard, you despicable vandal. Sonic never saw the first punch coming. His eyes rolled back. He almost blacked out. But Saitama's control over his strength was perfect, enough to erase worlds, yet precise enough to beat up a smaller opponent without killing him outright. Sonic was pummeled under a storm of fists, his body going black and blue. Saitama stopped halfway through a swing, looked at the ruined house, and sighed. He let go of Sonic's collar. Sigh. Forget it. Let's talk compensation. You blew up my place. How much are you paying me? The moment his collar was released, Sonic snapped back. He grabbed the broken hilt, blurred into a black afterimage, and reappeared directly above Saitama. Sword tipped down, he chose a free fall, aiming to plunge the blade into Saitama's forehead. All the humiliation of prison, the nightmare days he blamed on this bald man and that other fool king, flashed through him. Die, Saitama! I'll kill you! Hidden blade slash. Saitama looked up, took 2 steps back, and lifted his fist, holding it in the air as if pausing mid-gesture. Sonic's pupils pinched to pinpricks. No, this landing spot isn't right. Panic flooded him. In horror, his eyes widened as the blade, then his crotch, began to fall toward Saitama's raised fist. No! No, 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 no! 100, absolutely. Absolutely. Legend says that long ago a pillar reached up to the heavens in the mortal world, ringed by enormous boulders. Then a hairless man appeared. With a single casual punch, he cracked those massive rocks. After him came a blond man whose blow shattered the pillars into pieces. The pillar that had touched the sky was left exposed. The hairless man returned and landed another punch, and finally, the towering column snapped. Ah! The moment the fist connected, Sonique's face drained of color and a piercing, miserable scream tore through the air. She writhed on the ground, body convulsing, eyes bloodshot. Not here again. Why hit here again? Couldn't they hit anywhere else? Rage flared in Sonique's chest, and the pain came in crushing wave after wave until she might have lost control. Watching the screaming Sonique, Saitama suddenly felt he'd gone too far. He awkwardly reached out his hand. Do you want me to call an ambulance? We can sort out compensation later. How about that? But Sonique couldn't hear him. A maelstrom of feelings churned inside her. The humiliation of being thrown into prison, the bitter failure of her revenge, and the searing agony of being struck where it hurt most. Any ordinary person with a weak heart would have snapped, turned into a monster, and been cleanly wrecked by the bald Demon King's punch. But Sonique wasn't ordinary. As one of the people who had defeated the 44th class, her spirit was stronger than most. Just before her mind would have given way, something in her brain triggered a protective shutdown. She rolled her eyes and blacked out, her screams cut off all at once. Saitama blinked at the sudden silence, feeling awkward. He crouched and looked at the unconscious figure, scratching his head. Huh? Really fainted? Come to think of it, this face looks kind of familiar. He had the nagging sense he'd seen her somewhere in public. As Saitama stared, the S-Class communicator on his belt suddenly buzzed wildly. Alert, a ninja suspected of S-Class level combat power has escaped custody. Satellite tracking indicates the subject is in Z-City. S-Class heroes presently in Z-City, please respond. Appearance and ID of the subject follow. Saitama checked the notice, then glanced back at Sonique. Surprise flickered across his features. So you escaped from prison. Fine, I'll take you back. He grabbed her by the scruff of the neck. The ninja renowned for her speed was now limp as a rag doll. Saitama could lift her like a helpless chick. Seeing the bounty on the wanted poster made a rare smile creep onto his face, and most of his irritation eased. Not bad. He hadn't expected the reward to be that large. This way, she wouldn't have to pay out of pocket for the damages. The Hero Association would handle it. The ground under his feet cracked as Saitama unleashed his strength and shot into the air, a yellow streak carrying Sonique toward the association. When he came back, he found a tall, blonde man standing at what used to be Saitama's doorstep, or rather, the charred ruins of it. Yo, King, what are you doing here? Come to play? Too bad the console's all burnt to a crisp. King had been lounging at home when the communicator's alert pinged. He realized immediately that Sonique, the one he had personally helped lock up, had broken out. If she had escaped, King figured she'd only have two possible targets, him or Saitama. He rushed to the scene and found only destruction. Both Saitama and Sonique had disappeared. Saitama squatted amid the pile of autographed memorabilia manga shelves reduced to ash, hugging his knees and hiding his face in them. Even the usually unshakable bald Demon King felt a twinge of sadness. Those signed volumes had taken real effort to collect. He had stood in line, gone back for repeats. Now they were gone. King's sharp eyes caught the streaks of blood on the ground and pieced things together. Sonique had come for revenge. She'd blown up Saitama's place, and she'd been soundly beaten and probably hauled back to custody. King felt a hollow ache at the thought. When Sonique woke, the first thing she registered was pain, as if she'd been beaten in her sleep. Her whole body ached. Then a calm, almost magnetic voice spoke in her ear, soft and chill-making. You're awake? You've already become a proper girl. What the? The words struck Sonique like lightning. She reached down in panic, feeling for what she had always had, but the next moment shattered everything she believed possible. Whatever she had touched for decades was gone from her perception. It wasn't there. Vanished. She tried to convince herself it was an illusion, a trick born of the concussion and pain. She must still be out of it. It had to be. It had to. Lao Zuo is hungry and wants some delicious update reminders and generating electricity for love little gifts. 104. Various factors determine summonis. To be honest, Sonic didn't care much whether someone was male or female. In his view, as long as you could become a good ninja, gender didn't matter. He had grown up as a boy, and he'd known his little brother his whole life. Now suddenly, tragedy had struck. His brother was gone. For a moment, the cell filled with panicked screams. Sonic had never felt so humiliated. His eyes reddened instantly. Where is my brother? I can't sense him anymore. No. What pushed Sonic over the edge was that if he'd simply turned from a man into a woman, he might have been able to accept it with difficulty. The real horror was that he had lost the attributes of a man and, at the same time, had no signs of womanhood either. He was a freak, not male, not female. Seeing his long-cherished sweetheart in such misery, Sexy Prisoner, his face soft with pity, took a step forward. By the time Sonic reacted, it was too late. A massive, manly presence surged toward him. Sonic felt as if countless steel needles had struck his face. The pressure of that broad chest pressed down on him. The roughness of the chest hair scraped his skin, and he could barely breathe. Sexy Prisoner spoke, his voice thick with sympathy. "It's okay, honey. Even if your current form isn't what I usually go for, I'll still love you. I won't be cold to you. My love for every little sweetheart is deep." Sonic, already struggling for air in the prisoner's crushing embrace, felt a fresh wave of anger. "Who the hell wants your love? You muscular creep. Let go of me. Why am I enduring this ultimate humiliation?" The thoughts burned in his head, but he couldn't voice them. The man's huge chest had his mouth and nose entirely buried. The hug went on for more than 2 minutes. During that time, Sexy Prisoner proceeded to expound his philosophy of love without pause, telling the unconscious Sonic exactly how much he adored his little sweethearts. Phew. Finally finished. Now, little sweetheart, you know how passionate my love is, right? Eh? Little sweetheart, what's wrong with you? Sexy Prisoner released him and looked in alarm at Sonic, who had rolled his eyes back and was foaming at the mouth. "Oh no, it's all my fault for getting so worked up. I totally forgot you couldn't breathe in my angel hug. I must make up for my mistake." He carefully laid the limp Sonic on the cold, damp floor and leaned over him, his strong muscles shifting with the movement. "Mwah!" He puckered his thick, sexy lips. His stubbly chin came closer and closer to Sonic's pale, handsome face. The remedy he meant was to rouse the unconscious little sweetheart with his love-laden mouth-to-mouth. Just as they were about to touch, Sonic seemed to sense danger. He frowned, then opened his eyes. A pair of huge red lips filled his view. "Ah, come near me!" Fresh panic shattered his newly regained composure. Sonic felt not only intense disgust for the muscular gay man before him, but even more hatred for bald Demon King Saitama and King. The former had subjected him to unprecedented humiliation, while the latter two had cruelly revoked his claim to maleness. Damn them. As Sexy Prisoner drew closer, despair flashed through Sonic's eyes as recent traumas replayed in his mind. "Gwa, don't come near me, you damn gay guy. Oh, you still talk tough? You know how to flirt. As expected of a little sweetheart." 3 days later, City Z buzzed with life. Despite being one of the cities with the highest monster activity, people weren't overly afraid. 2 highly popular S-Class heroes were stationed here. In the public eye, no matter how powerful a monster descended on the city, those 2 could handle it. S-Class Rank 5, King, touted as the strongest man on the surface and boasting countless legendary battle records, was even rumored to be the secret S-Class Rank 1. S-Class Rank 10, One Punch Man, was the fastest promoted hero since the Hero Association's founding. Rumor had it he could defeat any enemy with a single punch. His bald head had become iconic. After the recent Boros invasion, the Hero Association had seen Saitama take down Melzargard's creatures with a single blow and had raised his ranking accordingly. King's ranking only rose a notch, and that was simple to explain. The association's high-level executives believed King had single-handedly defeated the leader of the alien warship during that incident. Besides, King's popularity was near the top, second only to Sweet Mask, making him a national idol. The top 4 S-Class slots were no longer pure measures of raw power. They also reflected influence and connections. S-Class Rank 1, Blast, remained unchallenged. In fact, most executives couldn't even explain why a hero missing for 2 years still held first place. S-Class Rank 2, Tatsumaki, was a tireless worker who constantly handled powerful monster disasters and appeared before the public more than anyone else. Her rank was well earned. S-Class Rank 3, Bang, wasn't just placed there for strength and battle record. As a Grandmaster of Martial Arts, he represented the entire martial arts community. S-Class Rank 4, Atomic Samurai, was a premier master swordsman who carried the support of the Council of Swordmasters. So, from the association executive's perspective, based on contribution and demonstrated ability this time, King's fifth place made sense. After all, right from the start, the Hero Association's rankings weren't based on pure strength alone. They were determined by a combination of contribution, popularity, and power. Wondered 5. Why should you be the Monster King? When the ranking changes were announced, neither King nor Saitama paid it the slightest mind. Right now, all their attention was fixed on the game console in front of them. King played with one hand, his other 4 fingers relaxed, using only his index to flick across the buttons. The free hand casually reached for a cola or a handful of chips every so often, calm, collected, as if he weren't in the middle of a tense match. Saitama, by contrast, was all in. His eyes were locked on the screen, his grip white-knuckled around the controller, afraid to miss a single input. Left punch, high damage. Right punch, high damage. Up, up, down, down. Left, right, right. B-A-B-A. Didn't see that coming, King. I looked this combo up online and practiced it. Watch me insta-kill you in one go. On the screen, Saitama's fighter launched a flaming rising dragon punch after a metered string of inputs. If it connected, it would instantly drain King's character's health bar and win the match. Expecting King to flinch or dodge, Saitama smiled, victory finally within reach. But as the flaming dragon punch closed in, King didn't retreat. He stood perfectly still. Ho ho, giving up at last? Saitama thought, pleasure flashing across his face. After all the matches and losses, could this be the time he finally beat King? At the moment their two characters collided, King's index finger blurred into an afterimage, tapping the console in a rapid staccato. Over a dozen different buttons were hit in a single, flowing cascade, fingers moving like water. King even managed to lift his cola with the other hand while pulling off the sequence, utterly unruffled. Instantly, King's fighter went into a guarding stance. His opponent's ultimate energy bar had emptied just enough to trigger a light shield. Miraculously, Saitama's flaming rising dragon punch struck that shield and rebounded. The attack hit Saitama's own character, and his health bar evaporated. Damn it! Why did I lose again? I refuse! Again! Saitama bellowed, his smooth, egg-like head flushing red with frustration as he started another round with defiance written all over his face. King glanced at the infuriated Saitama, and the corner of his mouth twitched into a small smile. He spread his hands casually. How about this, Saitama? King said. I'll let you beat me down to my last sliver of health, and when I'm at one drop, I'll fight you with just one finger. Sound fair? Saitama stared. For once, the bald demon king, who prided himself on being unemotional, felt humiliation wash over him. Let me reduce you to 1 health, and then you one-finger me to death? Are you kidding me? He thought. Fine. Don't say I didn't warn you. You'll definitely lose this time, King. King took a sip of cola, unperturbed. The reason Saitama was even hanging around the apartment at all was practical. His home had been blasted to ruins by a certain someone who'd lost his manhood license, and he had nowhere else to go for the time being. The Hero Association had promised to rebuild Saitama's house for free and to reconnect the utilities, which meant he could stay put. Free water and electricity were worth keeping. Gino stood behind them, watching the leisurely King and the intense Saitama while scratching notes in his notebook. Faced with Lord Saitama's 358th challenge, King's leisureliness is an essential part of a grand strategy among powerhouses, Genos wrote. Only by firmly believing oneself invincible, only by accepting every difficulty and victories as inevitable, can one cultivate the mindset of a true powerhouse. While this little war of controllers and egos raged on, currents were already stirring beneath City Z. Countless arranged pipes tunneled deep underground until they reached a cavernous hall. There, hundreds of hulking monsters occupied rows of seats, their eyes fixed on the raised platform in the center. On that platform stood a fat, one-eyed creature, about 4 or 5 meters tall, with a pinkish body. Gyoro Gyoro. He carried himself like a mastermind, his many arms waving as he addressed the assembly. You have all witnessed the earth-shattering duel between King, the strongest man on the surface, and the alien leader, Gyoro Gyoro intoned. His power exceeded our expectations. It is beyond human comprehension. However, he stopped, then pointed dozens of slimy arms toward an enormous shape to his right. As long as our monster king Orochi stands with us, whether it's the alien, king, the queen of espers Tatsumaki, or the newly famous One Punch Man, they will all bow. Standing at the edge of the platform was the monstrous Orochi. Dozens of snake-like tentacles writhed across his body. His face was a mask of tyranny and indifference as he swept his gaze across the gathered monsters. Feeling Orochi's imposing aura, most of the creatures bowed their heads deeply. Then an unexpected, discordant voice cut through the room. Oi, 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 why do you get to be the Monster King? That saves me the trouble. The words cut through the hall, and everything fell silent. Gyoro, who had been delivering a passionate speech with one limb raised, stopped mid-gesture, his single enormous eye pinched in annoyance. Oh, who has an objection? Does someone oppose Lord Orochi becoming Monster King? Me, of course I do. The arrogant voice rang out again. This time everyone heard it clearly. It came from the dragon-level executive's dais at the very top. Sitting among them, a small, black, humanoid creature rendered in a stark, simple style glared down at Orochi with undisguised contempt. I didn't join this so-called monster association to have some monster king suddenly shoved on me. I joined to unite and destroy the Hero Association. I don't accept this guy. The little black monster was Black Sperm, a dragon-level executive. Around him sat other dragon-level presences, each radiating powerful, oppressive auras as they eyed Gyoro and the imposing Orochi. A hulking, more than 10-meter-tall monster with black skin and dozens of crimson eyes clustered on his head sat upright and unreadable. Goketsu. To Black Sperm's right, a thin, yellow, cat-like creature yawned lazily, its body seeming almost liquid and its claws cruelly sharp. Meow. What are you looking at? Mocking my face? A furious shout snapped the attention of the hall. In the same section, a grotesque, heavily muscled human with receding hair had already stood, his clothes straining against his bulk, fur ugly. Beside him, slouched with a careless air, was a scruffy human wearing a tattered cape, stubble on his chin, and a dangerous calm about him. No one underestimated the power he held, homeless emperor. Gurgle-gack! An incomprehensible cry added a bizarre cadence. A dumpling-like creature with stubby limbs and a single huge mouth rolled and squirmed nearby. Gums. All 6 dragon-level executives acted differently, but their pressure converged on Orochi in the center of the arena. It was obvious. None of them welcomed the idea of a monster king suddenly placed above their heads. Why were there only 6 present? The reasons were simple. Elder Centipede was simply too enormous to fit in the venue. Even if the Monster Association enlarged the halls, he wouldn't fit, so he naturally could not attend. Rover was a rogue who refused to sit still. Gyoro had to tolerate him roaming his own territory, and Evil Natural Water had no real brain to speak of. Calling it to a meeting was pointless. Gyoro swept his gaze across the 6 executives, feeling the danger in the air. This is bad. I expected trouble from these unruly monsters. They wouldn't accept Orochi so easily, but I didn't expect such open rejection. Right now, the priority isn't internal squabbling. It's dealing with the Hero Association together. Projecting calm through his eerie, vaguely feminine voice, Gyoro announced to the hall, "If you have such strong objections, then once we've dealt with the Hero Association, anyone who wants to become Monster King can challenge Lord Orochi. The winner will have priority." His meaning was clear. Don't fight about hierarchy now. Finish the external war first. Sort out leadership afterward. Black Sperm sneered but understood. He made a contemptuous noise and sat down. Seeing even him withdraw, the other dragon-level executives eased their murderous intent one by one. The threat of civil war had been diffused, and Gyoro allowed himself a private, relieved breath before continuing. Next, we will deploy several powerful demon-level monsters to major cities. You may go and destroy to your heart's content. Slaughter, rampage, act on your nature. Do as you please. The declaration hit the assembled monsters like a feast being announced. Corrupted by darkness, most of them were inherently violent, and the mere permission to run rampant after so long a time of suppression sent them into raptures. Great, I've been waiting for this. Today, I'll tear 10 humans apart with my bare hands. No, 50. Humans, such fragile things, build cities that ruin nature. To protect the environment, I must destroy them all. Ha! I want to see if those heroes can keep up with my speed. I want to see their heads roll and recognize nothing. GGG. Their savage laughter filled the hall. Gyoro's expression flickered with a touch of helplessness. He knew these demon-level monsters had been suppressed, but he hadn't realized how starved they were for an outlet. The promise of a single chance to go out and kill had them riled beyond measure. Then, in the next instant, everything changed. Boom, boom, boom. The ceiling shuddered. Dust and chunks of masonry rained down. Cracks spidered across the dome as if it might collapse at any moment. What's happening? An earthquake? The heroes attacked? No way. Gyoro and the dragon-level executives all looked up. The air above them thrummed with the presence of something enormous and terrifying about to appear. With a thunderous crack, the ceiling exploded outward. A tall, blonde figure descended from the breach and hovered steadily in the air, the roar of the Emperor engine echoing through the hall. Since you're all here, this saves a lot of trouble. A soul-crushing pressure dropped over the scene in an instant. Every monster felt it, their whole bodies screaming with alarm. Some lucid ones recognized the tall, blonde figure drifting above them. Shaking, they spat out the name like a curse. King! It's King! He's come for us. No, I don't want to die. That thunder in my ears. That's the Emperor engine. I haven't killed enough people yet. Gyoro, Dragon Level XX, Monster King Orochi, you're all strong. Do something. Get rid of King. King hung in the air, doing nothing, and the monsters below went into a frenzy. Lesser monsters scurried like ants on a hot pan. Some panicked, some raged, most simply trembled. The dragon-level executives were less hysterical, but their faces were grave. As powerhouses, they could feel how utterly terrifying the aura around this human was. It pressed at them like a tidal surge of blood and chi, bottomless and vast. Gyoro stood frozen, staring up at that descending figure like a god, disbelief and confusion warring across its features. How did King find us? When were we exposed? 20 minutes earlier, King had been in a fine mood after thoroughly beating Saitama in a string of video games. He stepped out to buy snacks as a reward. After only a few steps, his stride slowed. He felt as if an unbearably hungry gaze had suddenly locked onto him, a look like a solitary bachelor who'd been thirsty for decades finally seeing a breathtaking beauty. Across the street, among the crowd, a tall, powerful young man stood motionless, his narrow wolf-like eyes fixed on King. Dressed in black tights that clung to a muscled frame and white martial arts pants, his white hair split into sharp twin peaks. King took a beat, then his mind supplied the name. Garu, the hero hunter. At this point, the Monster Association arc hadn't officially begun yet. Garu hadn't launched his hunt. King hadn't expected to cross paths with this indestructible pest, and judging by the look in Garu's eyes, the kid wanted to hunt him. Garu's face brightened into an excited grin, his muscles trembling. Even the heavens are cooperating. I was just about to start, and I actually ran into King. This is perfect. If I can bring down King to announce the beginning of my hero hunting, how amazing would that be? He was itching to strike but frowned. There were too many civilians. He doubted he could take King down cleanly in a crowded street. After all, King was S-Class rank 5. Noticing King meeting his stare, Garu tilted his head and pointed toward an abandoned construction site nearby, an obvious provocation. King had the same thought. He could probably take Garu out in one move, but he didn't want to risk fighting where bystanders could get hurt. In a minute, they were both at the construction site, facing each other. Garu didn't dare be sloppy against someone as infamous as King. He assumed the opening stance of a ferocious martial art, flowing water rock-shattering fist. A pale blue energy shimmered in his palms. His body seemed to melt into flowing water. With a flash, he surged forward, speed and intent harnessed into a single cry. Come on! S-Class rank 5, King, remember my name. I am Garu, the one who will hunt every hero. King didn't bother answering. He raised a hand and delivered a casual slap. Garu smirked with overconfidence. Who couldn't redirect a simple slap? He met King's open hand with his flowing water rock-shattering fist, attempting to redirect that force and counterattack. The sound was sickeningly crisp, a crack. Garu stared at his hands in disbelief. Both hands, used to form his technique, had been broken just trying to block King's trivial slap. You've got to be kidding me. Pain flooded his mind. He was stunned. I used my flowing water rock-shattering fist to block. Why are my hands shattered? A calm voice whispered in his ear, low and clear, "Your flowing water rock-shattering fist is far inferior to your master's." 108. It's time to end it. Those words struck like a needle, driving deep to Fierce Wolf's chest. He could accept mockery from others. If he truly was too weak to defeat an opponent, being ridiculed was natural. What he could not accept was being compared to Bang. As Bang's former student, Fierce Wolf knew his water stream rock-smashing fist could never match his master's, but that did not matter. He had left the dojo to follow his own path as a monster. He planned to defeat every hero to prove he was absolute evil. Admitting he was weaker than Bang would be, to him, the same as admitting he was weaker than the heroes. Irrational as it sounded, it fit the mindset of someone determined to prove he was the strongest by beating them all. Fierce Wolf's face twisted with fury. He didn't lunge wildly. He backed away, creating several dozen meters between himself and King. He stared at his hands, which had been shattered, gritted his teeth, and shook violently. The sickening snap of bones resetting echoed in his head as a white-hot pain flooded his senses. Gradually, his hands realigned, but they looked unstable, barely held together, as if they could fall apart again at any moment. He forced them to connect using a special martial technique. Each application of the water stream rock smashing fist sent fresh agony through him, but he had no choice. He could not outrun King, the strongest man on the surface, and the only chance to escape now was to fight to the death. Fierce Wolf controlled his breathing, letting his chest rise and fall in a steady rhythm. His hands traced familiar patterns in the air. Blue chi flowed between his palms, moving like running water. He exploded off the ground. His leg muscles coiled and released like a spring. He shot forward in a straight line, a human cannonball barreling toward King. "Come on, let's see what the strongest man on the surface does when faced with my attack." 1,000 possibilities flickered through his mind. Dodge, meet the force head-on, redirect it. Wind slammed against his face as he closed the gap. He widened his eyes, watching every one of King's movements, trying to predict the man's choice. King could have ended him with one slap, but he did not. A conceited, rebellious genius like Fierce Wolf deserved his pride to be crushed where he cherished it most. Then King moved. Fierce Wolf's gaze locked on him. The pressure of fighting someone legendary squeezed tighter than he'd expected. When King's motion became clear, Fierce Wolf's pupils shrank to pinpoints. He felt a rising disbelief. King's hands moved through the air with a faint golden glow around his palms. The aura was domineering, laced with the essence of flowing water. The stance, God help him, looked like the opening of the water stream rock-smashing fist that Fierce Wolf had practiced for years. But something was different. The posture and motion were similar, yet the force and feeling behind it were not the same. Is he also the old man's student? No, he's changed it. He improved the water stream rock-smashing fist. Thoughts crashed through his head, but there was no time. Fierce Wolf reached King and unleashed a brutal straight punch. It looked ordinary, but it was threaded with the water stream rock-smashing fist's power. If King tried to block, the technique's counter would trigger. King smiled slightly and extended his right fist to meet it. Their hands collided. The impact stunned Fierce Wolf. His fist felt like it had struck Mount Wanzang. The momentum vanished as if an invisible barrier absorbed it. The flowing water power he relied on was neutralized by an even subtler force. Impossible. He was utterly overwhelmed, outmatched both in raw strength and in the very art he prided himself on. As he tried to pull back from the failed strike, a huge hand caught his head and lifted his whole body. With a crunch, Fierce Wolf's skull smashed the ground, throwing up a small crater and spiderweb cracks across the earth. King released him and looked down at Fierce Wolf, who was splayed face first, like a dog put back in its place. King's voice was calm as he spoke. "I told you, Fierce Wolf, your water stream rock-smashing fist is far inferior to your master Bang's." Every word was a blade to Fierce Wolf's fragile pride. He forced his face out of the dirt, spat clotted mud from his mouth, and his eyes bloodshot with rage. "What do you sanctimonious heroes know? I will defeat all of you to prove monsters are right. I alone am absolute evil. I was born to beat you all." The shout sparked something in him. His aura flared. Rage unlocked a bit more of his potential, and strength surged through him. King nodded as if expected. A few taunts were worth it. This stubborn, furious whelp had indeed grown stronger. But it must end now. If this was all Fierce Wolf had left, leaving the dojo had been a mistake. King's next words landed dry and merciless. I heard you still toy with the idea of hunting heroes. Give that up. This so-called absolute evil is just a delusional proclamation, chunibyo, from a child who doesn't even understand the water stream rock-smashing fist. Fierce Wolf's face twisted further as King's condemnation sank in. His teeth ground. His whole body trembled with a promise of further resistance. King surveyed him coolly. This legendary, iron-enduring king had indeed risen another level. But it was time to finish it. Soliciting book titles, time for a title experiment. 3 slots remaining. If you have ideas, post them in the comments. General requirement, use 1 punch as a prefix. Maximum length, including punctuation, is 15 characters. All are welcome to submit. Title solicitation area. Oh ho 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 ho, Garou roared as he charged, unleashing strange, half-formed cries. He drove the water stream rock-smashing fist to its limit, sending an overwhelming barrage of shadowy fists at King from every direction at once. He couldn't, would not, accept it. How could his hero hunting campaign be set back at the very first step? How could he fail so blatantly from the start? Garou had always seen himself as a prodigy, a genius. Back when he was Bang's top student, he learned moves other disciples spent years practicing with a single glance. His combat ability outclassed the others. He had once been Bang's most promising pupil. Then one day, he turned his back on the dojo and beat every other disciple he could find before leaving. Many disciples, afraid of his vengeance, quit the school. In the end, only the untalented weakling Karen remained, and the once famous water stream rock-smashing fist school slowly faded. Despite his contempt for the old master, Garou had to admit that the style Bang taught him had been the stepping stone that let him challenge the strong. So he pushed it to its absolute peak now. But while Garou launched his all-out assault, King stood perfectly still, merely raising a single finger. The next instant, King's right hand blurred into a series of afterimages. Every time it extended, it met Garou's fists precisely, neutralizing the flowing water intent attached to them. Garou saw it and felt cold sweat roll down his forehead, but he forced his fists to keep coming at maximum speed. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! Why is every ounce of my force being neutralized by that one finger? This was worse than being overpowered. If he were simply outmatched in raw strength, he could push harder, trade blows, and grow stronger in the fight. This, however, felt like punching cotton. The flow of his technique was being erased in a way he could not even understand. The exchange went on for nearly a full minute before Garou finally stopped. His muscles trembled uncontrollably. He had reached utter exhaustion. He panted heavily, his narrow, wolfish eyes full of fury and disbelief. Curse it. Not a single punch lands. Why is every strike neutralized so easily? Through the repeated clashes, Garou had begun to realize something important. King wasn't using the water stream rock-smashing fist as Bang taught it. He'd adapted it into a new style, a modified version flavored with his own presence, and its effect was several degrees stronger than the original. Garou tried to imitate the posture and the motion, but he couldn't replicate the oppressive intent behind it. He could copy the form, but it was an empty imitation. Even as he panted and his body quivered at the limit of its endurance, Garou forced himself back into the opening stance of the water stream rock-smashing fist, eyes locked on King. Hey! You didn't think I was going down that easily, did you? I'm tenacious. A monster like me doesn't fall before defeating a so-called hero. As if answering that stubborn will, he scraped up one last reserve of strength and launched another water stream rock-smashing fist. His punch tore through the air with a keen whistle, combining brute force with the cunning finesse of flowing water. Ha! Garou let out a fevered, melodramatic battle cry and drove his fist straight for King's face, every inch of his expression hard with resolve. Thump! A dull impact, and then Garou's yell cut off as he melted to the ground, eyes rolling back, consciousness gone. King had only lightly flicked Garou's forehead. That precise, tiny force passed through skin and into the brain, producing a moderate concussion. Seriously, just like a delusional, hot-blooded kid putting on a show, shouting and screaming all day. He really thinks he's the protagonist of some shonen manga. Well, in a way, he wasn't far off. One Punch Man even had a nickname, the Legend of Garu. The kid's antics had taken up nearly half the screen time in that story. King casually hauled Garu up by the scruff of the neck, called the Hero Association staff, and had him locked in a cell to cool off for a while. The charges were straightforward. Randomly attacking professional heroes in public and attempted murder were more than enough. After dealing with that little mess, King tuned into the city with his mental energy and discovered something else. A large concentration of dragon-level monster auras hovered in one place, surrounded by numerous demon-level and tiger-level grunts. It looked like a gathering. He didn't hesitate. King moved to crash the meeting without worrying whether it was a trap or a coordinated ambush. In his eyes, these so-called dragon-level monsters were no different from the weakest wolf-level ones. 110, on the verge of exploding. The timeline snaps back to the present. King has suddenly barged into the Monster Association's lair, and every monster there freezes in panic. After a beat of chaos, Gyoro Gyoro regains its composure. Its voice takes on a solemn, almost excited tone. I really didn't expect that King, the strongest man on the surface, would have the arrogance to storm our base alone. King, your strength is considerable, but look around. The Monster Association has 6 dragon-level executives, and our Monster King Orochi. You cannot win. Although I don't know how you found this place, take my advice. Starting a war right now benefits neither side. I am willing to represent the Monster Association and sign a truce with the Hero Association. I want the world to see that monsters and humans can coexist. We are on the same side. Joro Joro's words hang in the cavernous hall. For a moment, the lower-ranked monsters, who had been panic-stricken, fall silent. Every pair of eyes turns to Joro Joro. Wait, what happened to all that bluster about destroying humanity a moment ago? What about the vows to slaughter and treat human lives like grass? Even the dragon-level executives, poised to strike, look puzzled. Their strategist is surrendering before battle begins? Monster King Orochi, poised nearby with coiled menace, halts mid-motion and fixes its deadpan gaze on Joro Gyoro. No one quite knows what the puppet is playing at. Inside Joro Gyoro, a different calculus is unfolding. These monsters are too short-sighted. King, the so-called strongest man on Earth, exudes an aura that seems to eclipse the world itself. Even if they marshaled countless monsters to overwhelm him, actually killing him could prove far harder than merely defeating a powerful foe. At the moment, Gyoro Gyoro judges their forces insufficient to ensure the death of a being whose combat level might vastly exceed dragon rank. A direct confrontation with King would cost the Monster Association heavy losses, because the man before them is a peak-level human power. Those are the surface considerations. Deeper, more dangerous implications trouble Joro Gyoro. King's intrusion likely means the Hero Association now knows about this place. If they squander time entangling themselves with King, the association's S-class heroes could descend in force. Worse, how did King find them at all? Gyoro Gyoro has always restricted surface activity and forbidden naming the Monster Association. Its base has never been exposed. Discovery now hints at a traitor within. The strategist's mind races with plans for reorganization and rooting out betrayal. King floats in the air. His presence washes over the hall. Blood and ki swelling like an abyss and an ocean, laid bare to every monster's senses. His Emperor engine roars, a thunder that fills the chamber. A faint curl plays at the corner of his mouth as he studies Joro Gyoro. Joro Gyoro, more precisely, the controlling psyche behind it, Psychos, has never cared for peace with humans. Psychos' aim has always been humanity's annihilation. King speaks, his voice serious and cold, but with a measured irony. A fine proposal. In this strange age, even humans can become monsters after an emotional outburst. If humans and monsters can coexist, society would stabilize. Monsters could be a useful source of labor, and the world might prosper. Gyoro Gyoro's many pink palms rub together in anticipation. It thinks, as expected of the strongest man on the surface, he sees the benefits immediately. If King accepts, the Monster Association would gain breathing room. Gyoro Gyoro's pupils narrow. Its body trembles with thinly veiled satisfaction. Lord King, if peaceful coexistence can bring so much good, then regarding my proposal. But King's next words slam into the hall like a boulder. But I refuse. The word detonates through the chamber. For a few stunned seconds, even the calculating Joro is speechless. Then fury erupts. You've been playing us this whole time. The monsters realize they've been toyed with. Faces contort with rage. Their fear ignites and becomes something hotter. Blind, burning anger. I don't care if you're the strongest man on the surface or underground. You dare mock me? I'll tear you apart. This is our chance. If we take down the strongest, our disaster rank will soar. Even if we die, it's worth it. Everyone attack! Don't let this human look down on us. Monsters have pride too. Roars and howls fill the air. Tiger-level and demon-level monsters surge upward, a living tide charging toward King. From his vantage point, King sees an endless mass, ugly, bizarre faces, a suffocating, malevolent oral pressure. Hundreds, maybe thousands, bearing monstrous strength press in on him. King raises a single hand. He brings his 5 fingers together and clenches into a fist. Then the space around him distorts. Boom, boom. Power erupts, whipping forward like a gale. Limbs are severed, torsos smashed. Monster bodies explode into pieces beneath the unseen impact. The assault collapses into a storm of flying flesh and broken bone. The strongest man on the surface against the entire monster association. A hopelessly uneven battle. And yet it is nothing but a prelude to the chaos about to unfurl. 111. Hurry up and die. One punch was enough to make the whole underground tremble. Debris rained down from the ceiling as an almost unbelievable force shook the cavern. The tide of monsters surging forward was blown apart by that single blow. A mist of blood filled the air and countless severed limbs clattered to the ground. The violent, tyrannical energy that had driven them evaporated under that punch, like a raging fire meeting a tidal wave, utterly overwhelmed. The monsters, who had come to expect dominance from their bodies in the monster factor, were suddenly paralyzed by one emotion: terror. They knew King's name. He was famous among humans as the strongest man on the surface. Still, they had always assumed a human had limits. How could one possibly beat so many of their kind? Now, with eyes full of despair aimed at King, they lost all will to fight and fled, wishing for 10 more legs to get away. Run! That thing isn't human. Don't be ridiculous. I saw Royal Ripper go to paste with my own eyes. He was demon level. How could he be O-code like that? Are you stupid? There were at least dozens of demon levels in that pile. Shut up and run. If you get in my way again, I'll kill you. They scattered, but their retreat ran straight into a rippling golden barrier that flowed like liquid metal. When did I ever say you could leave? King's voice boomed like a great bell. The Emperor engine thudded in rhythm, and the command sounded like a decree from a cold, indifferent god. The long-unused energy control activated. Brilliant gold flared around King, and a storm of energy hammered outward. The skill had limits. Its maximum control only reached Dragon Peak, so it wasn't especially useful in fights between top-tier experts. For clearing out swarms of minions, however, it was perfect. Before most of them could even scream, the demon-level monsters were submerged by the golden storm, shredded into fragments, and finally turned to ash that dissipated into the air. From a distance, Homeless Emperor stared, stunned. The energy control raining down was eerily like his own. Could King also be an envoy of God? The thought detonated in his head, his pupils constricted as realization spread. No wonder a mere human could achieve such a thing. He, too, must be an envoy sent to the human world. But why? How did this man's energy seem stronger than his? A flicker of jealousy flashed across Homeless Emperor's face before he angrily smacked himself. Bastard! How could I doubt God? God is benevolent and just, he muttered, face flushing. Black Sperm watched Homeless Emperor's self-slap with a mixture of pity and disgust and shook his head. The golden storm swept toward them, and several leaders didn't hesitate. Nyan didn't wait. Under the effect of his innate ability, his body thinned to a line and slipped into a nearby rock crevice, disappearing. Ugly President, feeling the power make his sturdy physique quake, chose flight as well and smashed through the rock behind him. Gums let out a strangled cry and bolted through the hole Ugly President made, instincts screaming to flee before they too could be wiped out. Black Sperm hesitated. The storm's power already exceeded what he could handle in his black sperm form. To hold it off would mean transforming into the ultimate life form, platinum sperm, the fusion of 54 trillion cells, which would be far too costly now. He still needed to split and multiply later. Using up that transformation here would be wasteful. He licked his lips in contempt and decided to run. But he couldn't leave Homeless Emperor, one of the Monster Association's few dragon-level executives, behind. Those demon-level pawns would be gone, but as long as dragon-level leaders survived, the association could be rebuilt. Black Sperm extended his right hand. It warped and inflated into a palm dozens of meters across, scooping Homeless Emperor up and carrying him away. Homeless Emperor was a ranting lunatic. The world is gift from God nonsense, the crazy speeches. But he was at least a legitimate dragon-level fighter. Black Sperm had never forgotten his goal in joining the Monster Association, gather powerful monsters and take down the Hero Association. The more high-end combatants he could save, the better. As for the weak demon-level pawns, he was sorry, but there was nothing to be done. Hurry up and die. The devastating golden energy storm continued to rage through the cavern. Even the stronger demon-level monsters couldn't withstand it. They were torn apart and shattered one after another. Joro was straining to maintain his psychokinetic barrier. It wavered like a small boat in a storm. Sensing imminent danger, he shouted at Monster King Orochi, who stood unmoving like a statue, his voice raw with urgency. "Lord Monster King Orochi, act now. The fate of the Monster Association depends on this. Use your unrivaled power and finish him." Orochi, the obedient weapon Joro had always relied on, remained motionless, his cold eyes fixed on the figure at the center of the golden storm. What the hell is happening? Joro struggled to keep the psychokinesis intact, trying desperately to stop the energy from tearing his body apart. His plans were spiraling out of control. According to Joro's scheme, in about 10 days, the Monster Association would launch a surprise worldwide offensive. Hundreds of demon-level monsters would strike cities to test S-class heroes. They would kidnap the children of influential figures as leverage, forcing the Hero Association to send S-class teams on rescue missions. Each S-class hero would be matched with an opponent tailored to exploit their weaknesses, and they would be defeated. When humanity's last forces made their desperate counterattack, Monster King Orochi would be unleashed to crush the survivors. Humanity would be destroyed. It was all calculated. Now everything was collapsing. Web-like cracks crawled across Joro's shield. He roared in bitter frustration as the barrier fractured, then the golden winds shredded him into pieces. When the storm finally dissipated, only 4 figures remained in the underground chamber. 2 tall men in unusual garb stood a short distance away, each clutching a sharp blade. The one on the left had short, fiery red hair. His expression mixed arrogance with a rare, grudging respect as he looked toward the blonde figure who had just unleashed the storm. "As expected of the strongest hero the humans talk about," he murmured. "That area of effect is incredible. Even my greatest ninja techniques can't reach that." Beside him, the other man was handsome, his narrow, phoenix-like eyes bright with shock and the thrill of a challenge. "What power, hellfire, once that energy settles, will go kill him. Let the blood of the strongest man on Earth add glory to our blades." They were dragon-level monsters known for their speed, Gale Wind and Hellfire Flame. Like Flashy Flash and Speedo Sound Sonic, they came from the same ninja village, though not the same class. Once powerful ninjas, they chose to become monsters to push their speed beyond human limits. The 4th figure was a towering martial giant, over 6 meters tall, dragon-level Executive Goketu. A legendary fighter who trusted in his own strength, Goketu had challenged Monster King Orochi once and been crushed, and only then had he begrudgingly submitted to the Monster Association. He believed only Orochi-ranked beings could truly defeat him. Even King, in his estimation, shouldn't expect Goketu to flee without a fight. Under the scrutiny of the 4, the last traces of the energy storm faded to reveal the tall, blonde man. The blood mist and scattered limbs that had filled the air had been ground to dust by the storm's force. King had controlled the spread with precision. He couldn't let the underground collapse. City Z lay directly above the Monster Association, and he wasn't about to bury the city with them. The 4 seized their chance. Monster King Orochi, Gale Wind, Hellfire Flame, and Goketu struck at the same instant. Dragon-shaped tentacles with gaping maws sliced through the void and converged on King from every angle. Distorting heat and roaring flames burst within the assault, and waves of brutal energy swept outward. Gale Wind and Hellfire Flame used their incredible speed to blink behind King and launch two razor-sharp slashes. "Look behind you, King," one of them taunted. Guketu coiled like a compressed spring and shot upward. His massive fist, wrapped in a violent astral wind, smashed down toward King's slight frame. In an instant, King, who had just quelled the storm, was being pounded from three sides. Four dragons had him surrounded. For a fraction of a second, all four attackers felt a chill. Something's wrong. Why is he so calm? The man being attacked looked untouched, serene even. Alarm flickered across their faces. Blue steam detonated, and in the blink of an eye, King vanished. He reappeared behind Gale Wind and Hellfire Flame so quickly it was almost invisible. "Then why don't you look behind you?" Gale Wind and Hellfire's pupils shrank as their blades bit into empty air. Before they could react, fists the size of boulders were already crashing toward their faces. Gale twisted his neck with a snap and barely let King's fist graze past his cheek. Hellfire wasn't so lucky. There was a thunderous impact. Boom! Hellfire's skull took the full force. He went airborne like an overturned puppet, blood spraying as he struck the cavern wall and skidded across the floor. Gale staggered, dazed, his bounce broken by the grazing blow, and slammed into a broken support pillar. The two speedsters were out of the fight before they could complete their attack. Guketu's downward strike was next to meet resistance. King pivoted and caught the giant's approaching fist, not with effort, but with an almost casual hold, and then redirected Guketu's momentum. The big man smashed into the ground with a ground-shaking thud, dust and rock blasting into the air. The dragon tentacles that had lunged from the shadows were shredded or blown aside by the precise, brutal force of King's counters. Orochi, still standing aloof, watched the scene unfold. The overwhelming power that had cleaved Joro apart had been nothing compared to the calm, efficient way King dismantled the coordinated assault. In the eerie quiet that followed, King stood alone amid fallen enemies and scattered debris, his expression unchanged, as if he had merely taken a short walk. When did I ever need human pity? King's fist struck Hellfire squarely between the eyes. The force, incalculable and immediate, flooded into him. Bang! With a sickening crack, Hellfire's skull exploded like an overripe melon. Red and white matter sprayed in every direction. The forged, lightning-fast body that had just been moving at peak speed froze, then slumped limply to the ground. "Hellfire! Damn it!" Gale's head snapped back, his neck cracking as he stared in disbelief. Terror, not grief, filled him. Too fast. This speed is overwhelming. Is he even human? Before King, Guketu materialized. His massive fist shredded the air, producing a piercing sonic boom, an attack that combined martial precision with sheer brute force aimed straight at King. "You dare attack those two while we close in? You clearly don't respect Guketu. Die! Pluto God-rending fist." The fist was less than half a meter from King's face, the wind from it blowing his blonde hair back, when King finally looked up. Where did this ugly thing come from? King's first reaction was to notice Guketu's horrifying visage. Countless red eyes crowded across his head. Then, almost casually, he punched. Guketu's arm, which looked sheathed in brownish-black armor, disintegrated into a spray of blood. He was hurled backward like a falling meteor, blasting through a rock wall. King didn't stop. He turned and delivered several more blows toward the thousands of flames pouring out of Monster King Orochi. In an instant, the air in front of him became a palpable shockwave that crushed the inferno, snuffing out the fire midair. In under 5 seconds, King had effortlessly neutralized the simultaneous assaults of 4 dragon-level powerhouses without breaking a sweat. Guketu lay embedded in the rock wall, every twitch dropping tons of rubble. Shock filled his eyes. How can this be? Why are humans so strong? For Guketu, the sting in his chest was worse than the pain in his body. He had devoted his life to power, climbing toward the peak of martial mastery, and now, after being defeated and transformed, this human's first reaction was not awe at his strength, but mockery at his appearance. For someone who had pursued the martial path single-mindedly, that was a crushing affront. Imagine dedicating your life to becoming a world-class scholar, undergrad to master's to doctorate, sacrificing your youth, only to meet a renowned professor whose first words are, "How did you get such a huge stomach? Did you stuff a pillow in there?" The indignity would be unbearable. Ah! This is too much, Gukitu roared, his 6-meter frame strained, wrenching himself free from the shattered wall. He planted his legs, shattering nearly 100 meters of rock behind him, and charged like a living cannonball, raising his remaining left arm. A being's dignity cannot be insulted. Today I will show you the ultimate martial way of a true warrior. Pluto, God-slaying fist. The roar deafened King. He lifted a hand to his ear, then raised his right fist. A brilliant golden light erupted around it. Please, if we're fighting, let's just fight. Stop howling. Who are you shouting for? King's tone was almost teasing. He did not sneer at Guketu's all-out attack. He showed a sliver of respect. Guketu had challenged the legendary Monster King for the martial way and paid the price. King could have ended him with a single blow, but he chose to grant Guketu a dignified finish. Endless golden light coalesced in King's fist, forming a blazing miniature sun that streaked toward Guketu's blackened hand. Emperor Fist! At the collision, an invisible shockwave shattered outward. In the next instant, with a crisp, bone-cracking sound, Guketu's left hand was obliterated. The golden energy surged upward. Guketu froze. In the moment before death, his many pupils fixed on King, trying to burn the human's face into his memory. So humans can be this strong. If I'm not mistaken, King was using genuine martial arts. Guketu realized, even as his body failed, that the technique King used was superior to his own Pluto god-rending fist. In their brief exchange, he had been overwhelmed not only by raw power, but by technique that neutralized his own. As a dragon-level executive, he was no fool. He sensed in those seconds that King's attributes far exceeded his own. Despite having the numbers to win, King still relied on true martial skill. That alone explained everything. Honestly, since when did I need human pity? Helpless, Guketu watched the cracks spread across his body. Then his being tore itself apart, exploding into a mist of blood that scattered into the world. Guketu lost control of his strength for a moment. The instant his consciousness slipped away, he felt himself fall into an endless dark sea, cold and silent. Is this death? In the blur, a muscular young man appeared, radiating confidence. The clean, sharp martial arts uniform looked inexplicably familiar. Who is he? Why am I seeing this in my memories? After a beat, Guketu remembered. That young man was him, the human self he had abandoned when he became a monster. Once, as the champion of the human martial arts tournament, Guketu had been in the spotlight, hailed by many as the #1 martial artist of the younger generation. He had been utterly confident in his strength, certain he could keep climbing the heights of martial arts and grow ever more powerful. Then came the day he met the legendary Monster King Orochi. A massive body, a dragon snake visage, eyes cold and void of human emotion, he trembled before it. Even so, Guketu had unleashed his signature move, the Pluto god-slaying fist. He discovered his own weakness that day. His proud technique was stopped by a single tentacle. His body, owned for years, couldn't withstand a casual blow and teetered on the edge of death. When a still pulsing monster cell fell into the dirt before him, Guketu wavered, not in his martial arts, but in his identity. Could humans really defeat such beasts? Could humans reach the heights he dreamed of? Could humanity survive against monsters like that? Fearing death, he swallowed the pulsing cell and abandoned his humanity. Better to live as a monster and keep climbing than to die and have everything end. But then King appeared. This dragon-level executive who had renounced his human self realized, perhaps for the first time, that humans could be this strong. Maybe my choice back then was wrong. With that thought, every monster cell in Guketu's body lost its vigor. His consciousness dissolved. Watching a dragon-level executive like Guketu get blown apart by a single punch stunned Gale midair. A sliver of doubt crept into him. If that had been a human who'd discarded their body to become a monster purely for speed, wasn't that foolish? But there was no time for philosophy. He felt every monster cell in his body scream, urging the host to run. Gale flicked his wrist and sent his razor blade streaking like a line of light toward King's face as a distraction, then turned and fled. He unleashed all his secret techniques and let monsterization run wild. 20 shadow burials pushed him further. Dense green ripples crawled across his skin, his form twisted into something hideous, and his speed spiked. His legs moved in a peculiar rhythm, producing 20 forward-running after-images. He was so fast he was certain even Monster King Orochi, or King himself, couldn't catch him. Reality, however, had other plans. A sonic boom tore from behind. Gale glanced back and saw the most terrifying sight, a figure wreathed in blue steam sprinting at a speed almost invisible to the eye. In an instant, King arrived at his side and threw a single punch. Space itself layered and distorted, and every after-image on Gale's left side was blown apart. Panic seized Gale. He forced his legs harder, ignoring the pain that felt like tearing muscle. But the most hopeless sight met him. King wasn't even running. He floated, sustained by psychokinesis, lounging like a predator toying with weak prey. "Stop on your own?" King mocked. Gale's eyes bloodshot. His mind fraying, he pushed his speed to the limit, but King followed him like a shadow. 10 seconds later, as Gale neared the surface, King shook his head. "What a pity. If your speed were dozens of times faster, maybe I truly wouldn't be able to catch you," he said. "As a thank you for the chase, I'll give you a punch." King flashed forward and threw an unremarkable punch. "No!" Gale cried, slamming his arms across his chest to block. At the moment of impact, a violent force surged through him. The dragon-level monster known for speed didn't even have time to react before he exploded into a mist of blood. King hovered there, surrounded by a pale green halo of psychokinesis that held the blood mist at bay. He looked down at Gale, who had been torn apart by a single blow, and spoke with a hint of feeling. "Honestly, it's been a long time since I crushed someone so weak. I didn't control my strength very well for a moment." At this point, of the 4 dragon-level monsters fighting King, only the strongest remained, the supreme dragon monster King Orochi. From the start, Orochi had fired only a single blast of flame and then stopped, watching coldly as King tore through the other 3 dragon-level monsters. King swatted aside the blood mist clouding the air and finally focused on Orochi, confusion in his eyes. He had expected the Monster Association's king to intervene to preserve their combat power, but Orochi had not lifted a finger. Even during the earlier energy storm, when Great Eye was ripped apart, Orochi had stood idle. That made no sense. On the surface, Great Eye was the Monster Association's chief strategist. As its leader, Orochi should not have simply watched him die. Digging deeper, the truth was darker. Great Eye, more precisely, the one controlling Great Eye, Psychos, had been the creator of Monster King Orochi. Orochi was, in effect, a biological weapon in her hands. For such a weapon to make no effort to save its creator was a startling twist. Sensing King's gaze, Orochi's immense maw split into an exaggerated grin, rows of jagged teeth bared. His voice came out a chaotic chorus, as if dozens of voices spoke at once, raspy, domineering, almost tyrannical. "King, as the 3, do you know why I did not attack you and instead let you slaughter my subordinates?" King recalled the original story and his expression hardened. He understood why Orochi had refrained from acting. To confirm the suspicion, the hundreds of dragon-shaped tentacles behind Orochi writhed in the void realm, sketching an abstract, distorted humanoid, a figure with its face obscured, its form a tangle of chaotic lines. "On the surface," Orochi continued, "I am the king of the Monster Association, the strongest biological weapon made by Great Eye, by that woman. That is what they think. In reality, my creation had a tragic purpose. As the strongest monster king, I was meant to be a sacrifice for the descent of a higher being. In human terms, just as that homeless emperor said, that being's name is God. I was born to be the sacrifice that would allow God to descend. All my power would be consumed when he arrives. But I refuse to accept this." Orochi's serpentine pupils flared with a murderous, pale red light. Hatred for that so-called God burned in them. King understood the sentiment. To be crowned Monster King only to be destined as a sacrificial meal for something else was intolerable. He did not interrupt. The original work had been the original work, and reality was reality. Since his transmigration, many events had already gone off script. He had to be careful when it came to God. God, King's chest tightened. Even if God couldn't beat the Bald Demon King outright, King wasn't confident he could win. After his own upgrades, he was far stronger than when he fought Boros. He'd officially crossed into divine rank. Still, his certainty didn't extend to confronting God. In every version of the original story, God's true power had never been revealed, only the ability to grant blessings and anoint powerful lieutenants to fight for him. Cosmic Garu, especially, put King on edge. He didn't think he could easily defeat him. If Cosmic Garu was already that formidable, the deity who empowered him had to be on another level. Orochi seemed to sense King's thoughts. The murderous fury in his eyes vanished for a heartbeat, replaced by sudden terror, before sliding back into cold indifference. His chaotic voice resumed. "You've come at the perfect time. To avoid becoming the sacrifice, I must capture a creature as powerful as myself and offer it instead. Only then can God be summoned." But he hesitated, and fanaticism crept into his tone. "That fellow's 20 lies in the deepest part of the Monster Association's underground. From watching closely, I learned a weakness. God has grown weak. If one of us takes the other's flesh to the 20, we can summon God and travel to the 6 where he resides. When that happens, the weakened God will not withstand my power. I will devour him and become the new God, and you, the Zero King, you will be my nourishment, the capital for my god-slaying." King stared up at the charging Orochi, confusion deepening into unease. He didn't remember this from the original story, since when had Orochi wanted to slay God? Maybe it was another change from his transmigration. He had to be careful. Orochi's eagerness made the situation even more dangerous. King lowered his center of gravity and took a single step forward. Space before him twisted into a spiral. His body became a streak of light as he launched himself, his blood chi surging like a vast, roiling sea. He decided to strike first. Orochi was not idle. His massive layered maw opened wide, and the dozen tentacles behind him spread as one. A violent beam of crimson flame erupted from his mouth. Gaia cannon. Both combatants fell silent and acted in the same instant. 116, fully adapted deep underground. Damn it, what on earth is going on? A tall woman woke with a start. Her glasses clattered to the floor. Long hair matted around her waist, she sat up in a compact, heavily insulated secret room, her exquisite face contorted with terror and disbelief. Psychos, the mastermind behind Great Eye, the secret controller of the Monster Association and creator of Monster King Orochi, had never felt so unsettled. An ominous suspicion had taken root in her chest. How has the plan slipped out of my control? What happened? She remembered the cold, crazed look on Orochi's face in the final instant, before Great Eye's puppet was torn apart by the energy storm. The memory chilled her. First, King had broken into the Monster Association and cut down its mid-level combatants with alarming ease. If nothing else had gone wrong, the dragon-level executives should have been dead or scattered. King's strength far exceeded Psychos' expectations. She had assumed even a legendary figure like King could at best rival Monster King Orochi. Psychos had always had a secret confidence in herself. She believed her psychokinesis could rival Tatsumaki's, and she expected that if all the dragon levels attacked together, aided by Orochi, King would have to retreat injured. Instead, things went far beyond what she imagined. With a casual strike from King, almost all the dragon levels panicked and fled. As the secret controller, Psychos had deployed many clones throughout the association's lair and had been watching the scene through their shared vision. She watched in stunned silence as Gale Wind and Hellfire Flame were killed with a single punch, and Goketsu, her great hope, was blown apart at once. Shock alone did not account for her frozen disbelief. As she watched, the suspicion she had most dreaded solidified. 3 dragon levels were killed, and Monster King Orochi, the strongest among them, had not moved. He had watched coldly from the side the entire time. So it's true, Monster King Orochi betrayed me. Since when has he defied my will? Orochi had been the ultimate biological weapon she'd created through countless experiments. Psychos had believed she had complete control over him, or at least that she could bend him to her commands. Only now did she discover he had been feigning obedience, plotting toward his own ends. Her clones transmitted Orochi's words back to her, and the truth settled over her like ice. So that's it. At that moment, the entire secret room began to shake. Debris rained down and the floor trembled as if struck by a magnitude 10 quake. Psychos realized what it meant. King and Monster King Orochi had begun fighting overhead. Her shared vision had been cut off, the clones destroyed by the aftershocks, and she could no longer see what was happening. She threw up a kinetic shield to ward off the falling rock and made for another hidden base, running as chunks of stone hammered the ceiling. Her brow furrowed, 1,000 thoughts raced through her mind. Wait, something's wrong. Relying on the fragments of shared vision she still had, Psychos had stared closely at Orochi as he prepared to fight, and something about him felt off. She had spent so much time with him that his aura had seemed like a constant blend of chaos and tyrant pride, barely changing. But when he had spoken, his aura shifted. It became cold and remote, almost as if he was a different being. "Gaia Cannon!" Orochi shouted. After absorbing a massive amount of terrestrial energy, Orochi unleashed his strongest attack yet. A crimson beam that filled the subterranean space swept outward in all directions. King vanished from one spot and reappeared right in front of the monster, still in the Gate of Shock and not having opened the Death Gate. For some reason, even facing a dragon level like Orochi, King had a foreboding he couldn't shake. The intuition of the strong is often worth trusting, and he chose to conserve his strength instead of opening the Death Gate and risking other unexpected assaults while weakened. Just as King prepared to land a punch on Orochi's head, the monster reacted. Dozens of dragon-shaped tentacles uncoiled, their bloody maws gaping, and fierce flames engulfed King. He could have dodged, but instead he fell through the air, letting the inferno consume him. When he opened his eyes, everything was a sea of red, an ocean of flame with tongues of fire licking at him. He dropped most of his defenses and allowed the flames to scorch his body. His skin began to carbonize, slowly blackening and charring. The carbonization lasted less than 3 seconds. Then, as if a mechanism had been triggered, the charring stopped abruptly and brand new skin grew back at high speed. Before the flames could do further damage, he had already adapted. Is this adaptation? King realized. The new skin was resistant. The flames no longer harmed him. In that endless sea of fire, he felt oddly comfortable, as if he were swimming in a warm pool. What had been an overwhelming blaze now felt like a hot spring, soaking him from all sides, warming him rather than burning him. 117. One punch to destroy Monster King. Orochi watched King being swallowed by his own flames and felt a sliver of unease when the flames gave no sign of finishing him. Normally, anyone would assume their opponent had been incinerated and stop attacking. Orochi's methods were not ordinary, and neither were his thoughts. This was bad. My flames aren't doing anything to him, he thought. That's why he's staying perfectly still. He turned his heads and loosed a Gaia cannon wrapped in crimson fire straight into the inferno. The blast distorted the entire conflagration. Holy shit. King had been savoring the heat when a Gaia cannon suddenly bore down on his face. He reflexively threw a punch. The cannon, a sphere of destructive energy, was cleaved apart by that single blow like someone slicing open a gas tank, an instant, terrifying explosion. From the rising mushroom cloud, a pale blue light coalesced into a figure, King, with a few shallow wounds across his body. Normally, those injuries would have snapped closed under superspeed healing, but King suppressed it. He let the stinging pain remain and watched the strange changes taking place inside him. Within seconds, the cuts sealed naturally, without a flash of green. He hadn't used superspeed healing. Orochi noticed the abnormality. A fierce light ignited in his eyes, and he opened his massive maw. Playing tricks. Dozens of tentacles stabbed into the earth, sucking energy from the ground. A Gaia cannon, constantly compressed and recomposed, began to form in his mouth again. Boom, boom, the ball of energy, alternately compressing and swelling, erupted and slammed into King at breakneck speed. The explosion rocked the entire underground chamber. If King hadn't already embedded a large number of Dragon Peak-level energy shields in the soil above, City Z would have been devastated. An energy blast comparable to a nuclear detonation underfoot would have been catastrophic. This time, Orochi's alarm bells rang loud and clear. Amid the violent blast, a tall figure floated in midair, arms crossed and completely unguarded, as if the explosion were nothing. This is the Gaia cannon. Even Orochi felt ridiculous. The strongest attack he could summon had no effect, and the target hadn't even defended himself. The figure slowly raised his right hand and swiped it to the side. A gale swept through the chamber. The still expanding energy was dispersed by an irresistible force, reduced to thousands of motes that vanished into the air. King's form stood fully revealed before Orochi, his body sheathed in a layer of crimson armor that covered everything except his head. It wasn't conventional defense. His clothes had been burned to ashes by Orochi's Gaia cannon, and the red armor had formed around him. After only 2 exchanges, King had already adapted to Orochi's power. Even the Gaia cannon could no longer harm him. Feeling the changes roll through his body again, King clenched his fists as surging strength circulated through his meridians. So this is adapt to heaven and earth. What a terrifying ability, to nullify an above-dragon-level Monster King in just twice. Now then, time to finish this. Under Orochi's shocked stare, King stepped on the Void Realm. Space warped and vibrated. His body became a beam of light that shot straight up and appeared before Orochi in an instant. Dozens of tentacles coiled together like ropes to intercept him and sprayed a sea of crimson flame, but King made no defensive move. He simply raised his fist and charged. Something impossible to Orochi happened. Even his own flames seemed to part for King, making way as if they were his subjects and forming a path of fire toward godhood. The tentacles couldn't stop him. Orochi plunged them into the ground again and frantically drew more energy. Faster! I'll be able to release it soon. He opened his blood-streaked maw, rows of sharp teeth gleaming, and a concentrated Gaia cannon began to form. Damn, too late! The cannon wasn't even half-formed when King arrived. The tiny fist, ordinary-looking with no flashy effects, no blinding radiance, was already before him. King had internalized all his energy, the power of the Emperor Fist contained within, yet it was far stronger than when it had once burst outward like the sun. On impact, Orochi's supposedly indestructible mass collapsed like snow under a scorching sun. Cracks webbed across his body and spread rapidly. Boom, his form shattered on the spot, limbs severed, and a dense life aura exploded outward. Monster King Orochi, sovereign of the Monster Association, was destroyed by a single punch. Hey, there's a One Punch Man fanfic about acting cool to get stronger that looks exactly like my book. Let me see. Z-City. A bald man in pajamas lounged on the tatami without a care for his appearance, sipping a cola and watching the day's TV. What on earth are you talking about? Bankai, seeing the hero on screen cut through the villain's long-winded speech, unleash a massive attack, and charge forward without a second thought, Saitama nodded once. That's how it should be. Most other anime are full of speeches. Ichigo Kurosaki's way is better. Attack first, ask questions later. He suddenly sat up, eyes going blank for a moment as he looked down at the floor. Huh? Why does the floor feel like it's shaking? An earthquake? Saitama pressed his ear to the wood. His face sharpened in an instant. Serious listening. His sense of hearing expanded, probing through the earth, picking up everything happening below with crystalline clarity. Monster King, Gaia Cannon, some weird symbol, strongest man on earth. The garbled words stuttered on TV, then Saitama realized what it meant. King. Of course, King went out for snacks and never came back, so he snuck underground to fight monsters and didn't even wait for me. He was bored anyway, so he changed into his trademark yellow hero suit, hopped up to the windowsill, and dropped lightly to the street. Better to go down and check. If King and that Monster King were fighting, they might wreck the house. King lived right above. Saitama walked up to a sewer grate, pushed the heavy steel cover aside with one hand, and leapt in. His body vanished into the dark tunnel. At the Monster Association headquarters, the severed head of Monster King Orochi fell through the air. Even at the edge of death, there was no terror in his eyes. Instead, a hidden excitement lingered. How is this possible? Orochi whispered. As Monster King, why couldn't my strongest attacks hurt you at all? You didn't even seem to defend yourself. Before his consciousness faded, Orochi's biggest question was why King had been able to effortlessly take his blows. It wasn't mere defense. The way King handled each strike felt like adaptation, as if every attack was being countered at its root. King gave no answer. He threw another punch, and the already shattered head crumbled to dust. You're about to die. Why ask so many questions? He muttered, and used his psychokinesis to sweep the scattered flesh and bone together, twisting them into a knot. Then, still probing with his ability, he extracted Orochi's life origin as it flew free from the mass of flesh, catching it in his hand. Done. Next, I need to meet this so-called god. Holding Orochi's life origin in his right hand, King spun his left. The scattered chunks of flesh rapidly coalesced under his psychokinesis into a scarlet sphere that rolled obediently behind him. The earth cracked as he plunged down farther, descending quickly to the deepest level of the Monster Association's underground. The lowest chamber was far larger than expected, clearly built to house something the size of Monster King Orochi. In the center stood a very old circular altar, faintly glowing. Strange. King's mental perception couldn't detect the altar. Even in the dim light, someone at his level would normally substitute mental sense for sight, but when his perception reached out, it vanished like light swallowed by a black hole. He raised his hand and called energy to him. It answered like a commander's call, gathering into a golden sphere of light so bright it rivaled the sun. With that illumination, he could finally see the altar clearly. It looked like ordinary stone, but gave off an eerie glow. Murals were carved along the walls around it. King stepped closer to study them. One mural showed a colossal many-headed dragon or serpent lying low, while countless tiny humans knelt before it. But the scene wasn't worship. Rather, the giant creature appeared curled up in fear. Beyond the beast and the humans stood a humanoid figure covered in countless twisted lines, gazing down at all life with indifferent contempt. At the sight of that twisted figure, a dizzy spell hit King. It lasted only an instant, but it put him on edge. A mural had caused a negative reaction in him. Is this the power of a god? I remember what Orochi said, King murmured. In his memory, Orochi had planned it out. Take the other's flesh and blood to this altar, use it to summon the god and open a passage to the other dimension where the opponent exists. The extremely weak god would be no match. He would be devoured, and a new god would rise, Orochi said. A god slayer, huh? King extended his hand. The scarlet meatball of Orochi's flesh floated up and settled in his palm. He pushed his aura to its peak, his strongest state without triggering the death gate. All right, he said quietly, let me see what this so-called god really is. Many people think it's over, but it's not. There's a small plot twist. Dear readers, please give some encouragement and small gifts. This author is about to starve. 119. You never belong to this world. King carried Monster King Orochi's life origin and all his flesh and walked up onto the altar step by step. The weak light that had been playing over the altar suddenly exploded. Monster King Orochi's life origin and flesh vanished in the blink of an eye. What? King's pupils narrowed. The energy pouring out of the altar was nothing like the forces he knew. It wasn't spiritual energy like psychokinesis, nor physical power like chi or blood. It was a violent, chaotic energy, a distortion made of 1,000 conflicting hues. The altar's light coalesced into a cylinder, and a massive blue beam shot straight up, ignoring rock, earth, and city, punching through the sky itself. The beam pierced the ground and rose past the planet's surface, shooting into the endless void. No matter where people were, no matter what they were doing, they all felt it, a throb in their souls that made them look toward City Z, toward the blue pillar that seemed to span heaven and earth. My God, what is that? A new tech demo? Some movie special effect? Are you stupid? The internet's breaking. This is a bad omen. There's no way humans could make this. It's Lord God. Please protect us. Some people were stunned, some confused, some wept. Everyone's attention was irresistibly drawn to the beam, as if something unseen tugged at their minds. Far above, dozens of planets that had hung in the starry sky for ages began to shift, sliding into a strange, distorted spiral. An invisible ripple traveled across the heavens, following the beam down and plunging straight into the earth. Deep beneath the Monster Association, King stood trapped in that blue light. The chaotic energy was dissolving him. His once impenetrable physical body melted like butter. Still, his face showed no fear. Green light flashed over him, and his liquefying form reconstituted in less than 1/10 of a second. His body adapted to the damage. Given a few more seconds, he would be able to exist inside that chaos. The source of the energy must have noticed. King's vision blurred, and in an instant he vanished from the altar. When he opened his eyes, the sight stole the breath from him. Floating lines filled everything. If you looked closely, They were lifelines of time. The universe around him was chaos. Shattered celestial bodies and dying stars flickered in and out against an immense empty black. At the center of it all sat an enormous humanoid figure, cross-legged. It was composed of endless twisted lines and flesh, an outline of a human with no hair or features. King knew immediately what it was. God. So this is the space you exist in? Not bad. I didn't expect God's realm to look like this, King said, honestly impressed. The space felt mysterious and imposing, cool in his terms. God lowered his head. The boundless being peered at King floating in the cosmic dark, and his voice rolled out like thunder and void at once. Among humans who can reach the divine rank, aside from that bald head who transcends the world's rules and the human who commands space, you are the only one. King grinned. The bald head who transcends the world's rules, Saitama. The human who commands space, Blast, the rank 1 S-class in the remake, whose abilities briefly suppressed the recently empowered, star-filled hungry wolf. King's tone turned mocking and probing. So, if I'm right, you're pretty weak. If you weren't, you'd have invaded the human world outright instead of hiding like a rat in the gutter. God did not deny it. He raised a massive hand, and 2 distant stars shot toward him, shrinking until they became 2 perfect spheres that sat in his palm. You're right. I cannot invade this planet directly. I can only transfer my power to its natives, make them my messengers in the human world. Not because I lack strength, but because my power cannot enter this realm. Do you know why I want to invade this barren world with so few resources? For the first time in a long while, God spoke at length, as if he had been waiting for someone to listen. The reason is simple. This planet harbors an existence that transcends the rules, an existence that has already manifested as a human. That human is connected to you. He is Saitama, someone close to you. And you? God's immense voice grew cold, tinged with something like contempt. Stowaway. You never belonged to this world. What a disgusting fellow. A hint of anger crept into God's voice, and the surrounding stars began to whirl at impossible speed, spinning around him. King couldn't help but laugh, an ugly, furious laugh. What? I'm a transmigrator now? You, skulking around in the dark like a sewer rat to invade worlds, dare mock me? I really don't know who gave you the face. Oh wait, you don't even have a face. The words snapped out like gunfire. God, who had only just shown the slightest irritation, froze, caught off guard by the torrent of insults. King was surprised too, a transmigrator, so this God knew he wasn't native here. He didn't know, though, whether God could sense the system inside him. Puny human, how dare you blaspheme against God? God's roar rolled across the desolate darkness of the void. Stars rearranged themselves behind him as blinding cosmic rays burst from his palms, hemming King in from every direction. To King's senses, the power was crushing, far beyond what he'd faced even with the 8 gates open. Yet King simply stood with his hands in his pockets, his eyes cool and contemptuous as he stared at the enraged deity. How pathetic. Has the so-called God resorted to bluffing? Countless stars rushed together and detonated around King's position. The cosmic rays slammed into the massive sphere of light. The explosion shredded star matter and reverberated across the void. And then, from the heart of the blast, King emerged unscathed. He wore a battle cloak that radiated a surging aura. His blonde hair fluttered in non-existent wind. For the first time, God felt a jolt of shock. He was in his own domain. How could he not kill this human? He extended a hand again, and space itself cracked like a mirror struck by a stone. King's body seemed to shatter as if he were glass. Still, there was no blood. King simply stepped out of the broken space, expression unchanged. If this is all you have, then I'm afraid you really are going to be slain. The aura around King flared, the pale blue current blazing into blood red, his inner energy burning like roaring fire. The seal within him snapped open. 8 gates. Open. In an instant, King became a streak of red light and charged. Bolstered by his current stats, a blood chi dragon, nearly 10,000 meters long, roared into existence in the void, tearing space as it surged toward the arrogant god. Night Guy! Facing a god of unknown might in his own territory, King unleashed everything he had. God remained seated at the center of the starfield, watching the rampaging blood chi dragon. Though faceless, he radiated scorn. Merely a constructed creature of your bodily energy. So your true power is self-contained? A crude trick. To a god, a mortal's ultimate moves are useless. Space in front of God rippled and split, the void fracturing into tens of thousands of layered traces, an infinite maze of space. Empowered by his blazing inner energy, the blood chi dragon tore through every obstacle, the space barriers blocking its path shattered like cheap glass. One after another, the 10,000 layers were destroyed. When the dragon passed, it had dwindled from nearly 10,000 meters to less than 100. As King's energy thinned, he stepped out, brow furrowed, staring hard at the haughty deity. This was the first opponent, aside from the bald demon king Saitama, who had been able to blunt King's night guy with sheer power. God sneered, his voice like a hall of thunder. "This is my domain. No matter how mighty your attacks, I can create infinite rooms for you to waste them in. How can a mortal's techniques harm a god?" God pointed, and thousands of spatial barriers collapsed onto King, pressing down like a divine mountain 100,000 feet high. His spine bent under the weight. The scarlet inner energy on King's body flared hotter, more furious, and wave after wave of terrifying force surged from within him. Bones creaked and cracked, yet he forced himself upright against the pressure. "You didn't choose to kill me here. You chose to suppress me instead. That proves your weakness." King's voice was steady. The crushing pressure eased slowly as Adapt to Heaven and Earth continuously tuned him to the spatial suppression. God watched with something like interest. He raised a hand and drew dozens of compressed planets from the depths of the cosmos to press down on King, an even more dreadful load. King's pupils pinched down as bones fractured inch by inch, flesh showing the first signs of being crushed. Super speed healing worked non-stop to repair the damage, while Adapt to Heaven and Earth let him adapt to the ever-increasing pressure. Under such torment, the restraints within him began to loosen. His limits were peeling away, and his strength kept rising. The more King grew stronger under suppression, the more God, who had intended to remain aloof and contemptuous, felt a long, dormant irritation rise. What an annoying fellow. He can't be killed, and he only grows stronger under suppression. I can't fathom where these disgusting abilities from beyond this world come from.